Hello, everyone. On behalf of Global Summits and myself, Pavel Krastev, DDS, also known as VGO, the VGO Man, and I brought up my old nickname from back in the day, High Speed Pav. I mean, that was like 27 years ago. Anyway, listen, it's been a fantastic weekend. We had a great day yesterday with Global Summits here. We had two fantastic presentations and a couple of updates. You guys know how I like to start the show usually. Yesterday was Dr. Kianoshaw's birthday. As you guys, I'm sure all of you know, Dr. Keanu Shaw is the pioneer behind this entire project and bringing us all together across the globe. So let's have a shout out for Dr. Shah. Happy birthday, my brother.
Happy birthday, Dr. Shah.
Yeah. And we all love you, and thank you for doing the unthinkable, the impossible. So getting back to business, today we got a very special friend of mine, Dr. Sherif Radwan from New York City. So how I met Dr. Sherif, wow, that's a long story. We've known each other a few years, but a couple of years ago, I was invited by advanced implant educators and Dr. Isaac Howell to be an instructor at a course we had a 5-day live course that was really state of the art, fantastic course. So that's where I met Dr. Sherif. So I had the opportunity there to actually be his instructor. And when I started working with Sherif, I said, let me go outside. I'll come back when you're done. Because Sherif doesn't joke around, and he knows more than anybody I know. He's a great guy, very, very talented clinician. So that's how we became friends with Sherif, and it's been now I consider us brothers.
Yes, sir.
And I don't say that lightly. So a very talented guy. And the other thing that I got to mention about advanced implant educators, when you start doing courses, when you start learning. When you start traveling a bit, every single time you'll do an event, you'll always walk away with a couple of special friends. And, this is what it's all about sharing our knowledge, sharing our passions, and, becoming true and honest, good friends with one another from across the globe, of course. Now, having said that, Isaac Towell, great guy. I'm sure you guys all know him. Advanced Implant Educators, great organization. I highly recommend it for advanced training in surgical procedures and implantology. All right, now let's talk about what we did after I met Dr. Sherif. So after I met Dr. Sherif, we traveled here, we traveled there, we traveled all around the globe. And one particular trip that I want to focus on today a little bit is Alaska. So Alaska, there was a show that H&H invited me to be there because H&H, as you guys probably know, is the USA dealership for Helmut Zeff, and I'm key opinion for Helmut Zeff, and we worked together. So anyway, it was a great experience. But make a long story short, so the only direct flight to Alaska was United Airlines. Now, United Airlines, aside from taking us there directly, was, in my book, the worst airline that I'll never step foot on again. Anyway, we get to Alaska. Now, Alaska. When you walk out of the airport and you come out, you know you're in Alaska. You look around and you know it's Alaska, right? Everything is different. People are different. Initially, you feel a little scared. But then you very quickly, as soon as your shuttle bus arrives, you realize that the people in Alaska are like the bestest, nicest, kindest, greatest, most pleasant, most loving people that you can meet in your life. And I tell you something, Alaska is a place that everyone who has the opportunity should go there at least once in their lifetime. It's nature and beauty that I cannot explain to you. Okay, I mean, you see the mountain goats on the mountains. So we actually had the pleasure of staying in the Ayahuasca Hotel, which I think close to Anchorage, which is about an hour from Anchorage. I think Ayahuasca is probably the biggest and the best hotel there. I mean, there's not that many, and I'm gonna talk about that in a minute. But Ayahuasca was really just a resort that was full of restaurants, full of these beautiful porches, and you can hang out. And then on top of the mountain, there was a restaurant. I forget the name, So you gotta understand, like us Bulgarians, because I don't know if you guys know, I'm half Bulgarian, half Armenian. So I don't know which is the good half, the bad half, doesn't matter. But every time I go to a cruise, every time I go on a trip, I always meet somebody Bulgarian working in the bar, working in the coffee shop. And needless to say, the same thing happened in Alaska. So me and Dr. Radwan, we arrived there. And, immediately we made friends with this wonderful girl from Romania who actually was there working and going to dental school at the same time. So we became friends, okay? Now, Dr. Sherif Radwan is a gentleman. He's a gentleman, he's a scholar. But you know how most men are, guys. I mean, most of us are pigs, all right? That's besides the point. So me and Sherif would go to dinner on top of the mountain. I think we went there twice, 3 times, because in Alaska it gets dark very, very late. Like 11 o'clock at night, it's light. So me and Sherif wanted to try the steak restaurants and this restaurant and the other restaurant. Half of the time we got there, the place was just closed. All right, so we ended up, by the way, this thing on top of the mountain, this is probably the restaurant there. All right, so no joking around. We're talking 5-star. So our Bulgarian friend from the hotel had a connection up in the mountain with another Bulgarian friend who we met. So we became friends. But the point that I was trying to make about men and being pigs is the following. I mean, we invited these beautiful girls to come join us for dinner. And I think they turned us down. We were very disappointed because, me and Sherif are the kind of guys, when we invite you to dinner, it's just dinner, all right? And that's the kind of guy Dr. Radwan is. Those are the kind of people that I'm friends with, all right? Most of the time. So now, getting back with the Alaska story, where do I begin here? Let me see. I showed you the sheet yesterday. This is my teleprompter, all right? So today, this is my teleprompter. You guys all saw it. Nothing changed. So let me take a look. What am I going to talk about next? Oh, yeah. So yesterday, when I was getting ready for today, I started watching some old videos from Alaska. So, I got this thing, and I don't know if I'm the only one who does this, but, I love to watch my own videos. And I crack myself up half the time. That's the funny thing. But anyway, so we had a wonderful experience there. We met some lovely people in Alaska. We did a lot. I went fishing, and Sherif did not join us because Dr. Radwan and myself, we're animal lovers. I mean, we both love animals. Dr. Sherif's got a Bulgarian dog. His name is Mojo.
Yes,
all right? Mojo has a Bulgarian passport, and Mojo is from Bulgaria. Yes. And I mean, I wish I would have told Dr. Radwan to post a picture today in the presentation, which he didn't. But he's a gorgeous, gorgeous dog. And I mean, we just love animals. Now, me, I cheat a little bit with the fishing. I'm a fisherman. I like fishing. I know you can crucify me for it, but I like to eat fish and I like to catch fish. So I caught a red rock fish. Now, guys, the picture I posted yesterday of that big monster, it's a real thing. A lot of people write me personally. They say this is fake. I say this is as real as it gets, and it comes from 1,200 feet down. All right. So, and by the way, it's delicious. All right. So the trip was fantastic. The last day came, and Dr. Sherif flew out about, I'm going to say, 4 or 5 hours before me. Now, it's beautiful. I mean, you got to imagine this. Let me put it in perspective. It's a beautiful day. The sun is out. I mean, and when I say Alaska, I mean, we were in shorts. So he leaves, disappears, United Airlines. He came, we came in the same plane, actually. So he had to go back to work because I cheat, take the next day off. But anyway, so he leaves. So my time comes, I get in the shuttle bus, driving to the airport, everything is la-di-da-di. I like the party, it was a great time. And all of a sudden, my phone starts dinging and getting me text messages that my flight with United Airlines has been canceled. All right, it happens. Listen, safety is number one. We can't throw rocks at nobody. Safety is number one. Get to the airport, no problem. I figured they're going to give me a new flight. So now there's 300 people there, all right, yelling and screaming, waiting in line 3 hours. And then they say your flight's canceled. Well, I says, all right. Now, where am I going to sleep? Well, they say you can go to a hotel. So I said, well, can you put me up in a hotel? I mean, I'll pay for it, but give me at least a hotel. No, can't help you. Anyway, it's okay. So my wife, she's my event planner. She organizes everything. I call her up in a panic. I says, honey, you know me, I can't press a goddamn phone dial, you know. I says, we got a problem. I tell her what's going on. She starts calling Anchorage, all the hotels. Guess what? They're sold out. Because my name is Murphy. My second name is Murphy. If it can happen to you, it'll happen to me. I said, you got to be kidding. No. So it turns out there was a convention in Alaska. And all the hotels, and I mean big, small, I mean the Roach hotels, I mean the top-notch hotel, everything was sold out. So it came down to the point that Pablo was going to sleep on the bench outside the airport with a little cup. And all of a sudden, see, this is why I love my wife so much. All of a sudden, she says, we have Basha and her husband there. And that's her cousin, her third cousin or something like that. So she calls her up. 20 minutes later, they come rescue me from the airport. We get to the house. They say, Pablo, we're sleeping you in the doghouse. You know, no problem. I said, I'll take anything at this point. I sleep on the grass in your backyard, in the doghouse, the cat house, doesn't make a difference. So we had a great evening. We had a nice dinner, lovely people. Basha, and you guys saved me. Thank you. So the next day comes, my flight is rescheduled, and we wake up nice and early, and we go to about a 2.5-hour trip up towards the Denali Mountain. Now, this, folks, is a view that I think you can only get about 20% of the time when you travel to that destination, because the other time it's kind of covered by overcast. It's overcast. It's cloud, like, you know, a lot of clouds. So, but I got a view that was spectacular. So we're driving up there, and we get to a little town. I can't tell you, I don't remember what the name was, but it was all these little shops and all these beautiful people walking around enjoying nature. And then we sat down, we had lunch in this restaurant. So guess what? I start hearing Bulgarian again. One thing leads to another. It turns out all the staff, they're all Bulgarians. I mean, these damn Bulgarians, you know, you find them everywhere you go. So now we had a great day. Everything's scheduled. You know, I'm going to go home and I'm going to the airport. And all of a sudden, my phone starts dinging again. This flight's been canceled, sir. Oh, so now I said, well, what do I do? We'll come to the airport. We'll go to the airport again. And let me tell you, it got nasty. It got ugly. They told me again, I'm going to have to sleep in Alaska. And then I said, I'm gonna get boss lady involved. Now, when I get boss lady involved, things usually don't turn out pretty. So, make a long story short, they booked me on a first-class ticket airline to travel, I believe, to Colorado, and then from there to New York. But guess what? They mixed something up, made a mess of chaos like spaghetti and noodles with the damn connection, something, so I couldn't get on that. So then the next option was they're going to put me on a flight. This is United Airlines. They're going to put me on a flight with like 17 connections, and I would arrive in New York 3 days later. So all hell broke loose. I mean, my wife went crazy. Her mother got involved. Now, when my mother-in-law gets involved, it gets real ugly. All right? My mother-in-law, she's like a cobra that's waiting to strike you. I mean, most of the time she's really cool. But when you piss my mother-in-law off, bad things happen. All right? Real bad. Finally, Alaska Airlines at 2 o'clock in the morning. They did some buying of tickets, transferring. I don't know what my wife did. Finally, I got on the airplane with Alaska Airlines, and you know, they brought me home. That's why I love JetBlue. You know, JetBlue in my book is number one. I love JetBlue. JetBlue is, you know, it's it. Anyway, so I'm gonna start introducing you guys to my dear friend, Dr. Sherif Radwan. Dr. Sherif Radwan. You guys see his root canals. This guy, he's a general practitioner, but you got his root canals. When I see them, I salivate. Right? But here's the thing: Sherif doesn't tell you how he does it.
No.
You know that the other bone I gotta pick with this guy? He's got a nice apartment. I mean, I'm a car buff. Like most dentists, we love cars, we love airplanes, we love all this kinds of shit. Boats, don't forget boats. So he pulls up here in my house with this freaking thing that, I mean, I'm not gonna say what it is and how it is, but let me tell you, it's a sexy beast. And God bless this guy, but I got a little envy, I get jealous once in a while. Anyway, so Dr. Sherif, today we'll be talking about the LAPIP procedure. And let me go through his resume and let me read it to you guys. He's again a brother from New York City over here, so let's go through his resume. All right. Dr. Radwan is a graduate of Columbia University School of Dental Medicine, 1990. Immediately after his graduation, he was invited to join the staff at the restorative department as a part-time clinical instructor. Dr. Radwan remained on the teaching staff for more than 10 years. During that time, he maintained a private practice in Manhattan until today, where he practices full-time now. Dr. Radwan is an avid believer in cutting-edge technologies and uses it to achieve great results on pretty much daily basis. Among his interests are ridge augmentation, placing implants, sinus lifts, and laser gum surgeries. Excuse me. And he has an infatuation, as I said 2 minutes ago, with very complex root canal procedures. And one day I hope he does another presentation on his root canals, because they'll blow your mind. All right, so Dr. Radwan's hobbies extend between long-distance cycling, and he has a love and affection for animals. And besides that, he's an endless traveler. Now, speaking of hobbies, I forgot to mention, I got a new hobby. I mean, I love that. I go to the range. This is my new hobby now. All right, this is my new hobby. I go to the range, and they give me a target. Now a pretty damn good shot. Like I hardly miss. But with my new toy, you really can't miss unless like you're a dodo bird or you like shoot backwards. So like this is like a new passion I have now. Like I'm collecting these things. The beautiful hardware. All right. Anyway, Dr. Sherif, welcome to the show, my friend. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Paul.
I'm sorry I took up so much of your time with my nonsense before. So now before we start the show, what I want to do is make sure the audience, Sheriff, I go everywhere with my tape measure, bro. Make sure everybody's 6 feet away. All right, guys?
6 feet away.
Don't mess with us with this. I swear to God, if anybody comes close to me, I'll spray you. I got the wind in my bottle here. Don't you come closer than 6 feet.
Absolutely.
So, Dr. Sheriff, I turn the podium over to you, my brother. And
all right. Hello, everybody. First of all, I would love to thank you very, very much, Pavel, for the invitation. You're a friend, you're a brother, you're a true friend. As Pavel mentioned before, it's like first time we met, probably took like 2 hours to bond. And by the way, I'm not an easy guy to bond with guys, but Pavel to me was just a great guy, a straight shooter. He wears his heart on his sleeve, so whatever he tells you, just take it because that's how he feels. That's his entire life. He's like that. Now, the way we met, we met in Tijuana, Mexico, where he was teaching. Of course, and at that time I was placing implants. I did sinuses and all of that, but it had been more than a couple of years, like maybe 4 or 5 years, that I haven't polished up on my skills. So I said, all right, I was like, let me join a class where I can meet up with guys. This is how the best way for all of us to learn. You just meet up with other professionals, listen to what they have to say, listen to their experiences, because as we all know, dentistry is never a one way street. It's not an exact science. You can always do things differently. You can think of other things, share it with other friends. I love sharing my experiences with my colleagues. I love it. Students, colleagues, patients, even. You just tell them what you do, and they'll welcome the knowledge and the experience. Everybody does. So we met in in Tijuana, and yes, I did have some experience. However, I believe when I went to Tijuana, I have placed already like 700 implants, maybe. You know, a lot of bone grafting. However, uh, that course that Isaac Towell is running, along with Scott Gantz, and these are like world class clinicians. I mean, you really learn. You know, it's like even though you know a lot and you've done a lot, but there is no end to learning. That's if anything I always tell people, there is no end to learn. You can always learn something new. You'll always uh, find out about a product that it's been there, but you really never experienced it till somebody tells you. Just go try it, and you're gonna like it. And that's exactly what happened with me uh, during that course. I've seen a lot before that course, but I also seen a lot during that course. And believe it or not, there is a lot of stuff that I learned that I'm doing it today, and I like it. I like it a lot. Uh, and then we came back from Tijuana, and Pavel and I became good friends. Uh, Pavel, for the audience that don't know, is an inventor. He's just like an inventor machine. You know, it's like he just keeps inventing stuff. And I took a liking to one of his inventions, the VGO system that he invented. That was taken up by a company in Germany called Helmut Zeff, which is really a great company to to manufacture uh, fine surgical equipment, instruments rather. And they partnered up with him, and they produced that VGO system. And I am proudly the first U.S. clinician to own one of those, other than Pavel. Obviously, Pavel had the first one, but I bought the first set in the United States. And I always tell my patients that before I use that system on them. It's a system that, genius, obviously, that is used to place implants in the aesthetic zone in the front, in the top. And so basically from the first premolar to first premolar. And it really is designed to save bone, to save the crystal bone, and also it doesn't generate heat, and it's all manual. You know, it's like it's hand controlled, so you really got a great control over it. And we Pavel and I have few good uh, videos of procedures that we've done. Uh, I'm sure Pavel can touch up on that and tell you how to see it and where to see it because it's really a great product. Um, then we've done the traveling, Pavel and I. You know, it's like we've done few courses together. We went to Alaska, which was a ton of fun, obviously, uh, except for the last couple of days for him where he missed the flight, or no, he canceled his flight, and then it turned a little ugly. I kind of tend to agree with him that United usually is not the best company out there to travel with because once things go bad, they really go bad. They don't rectify things quickly. They just let it really get ugly. So, but unfortunately, it was the only flight out of New York to Alaska nonstop. Everything else, you had to stop somewhere and waste 2 3 hours. So he graciously drove to Newark from. I live in New Jersey. He lives in New York. So he drove from Long Island to Newark, which is about an hour and a half ride to make that flight. But then coming back, which was fine going in, coming back was not that great. But at any rate, then we did other courses together, and we always have fun. You know, Karina, his wife, she's just like so gracious and so lovely. You know, it's like you can't help but love her. You know, it's like she's really a nice, fine lady. Um, uh, then I want to touch a little bit about myself a little bit. You know, so I'm a general dentist in New York. Uh, I when I like something, I like it with a passion. And if any of the young dentists are watching us, or dental students or something, I tell them this, it's like, if you want to really learn something and want to do it, then go full force. Don't do it. Don't just brush on it. Just like, no, get to know it really well. Like if you like root canals, don't do just one course of root canals. You're going to have to see 4, 5, 6 guys doing root canals because everyone does it differently, by the way. So is implants, so is gum surgery, so are sinus lifts. So everybody has a different technique and different ways. And what I'm saying is principles are the same. We all have the same principles. We try to adhere to it. However, the fine detail of how to move this instrument that way, or use that instrument that way, or use a certain product in your product, we're all different in that. Once we do that, once you do that, then you start to be exposed to the different ways and different techniques of doing the same thing. So at the end, you're gonna have a beautiful product, and it doesn't necessarily have to be what you learned in dental school or what you learned in the first course that you took, but you will reach that once you take enough courses to learn how to do this stuff. Now, so the first part of my career, I was one of those guys when I first started my career. It was the beginning of cosmetic dentistry. Like when I was trained in dental school, we still used, I think, silicates, to do the composite fillings and all of that. Then around that time, they started doing bondings as a mean of composite because we didn't have porcelain veneers at the time. At that time, porcelain veneers were just starting to come on the surface, and I was fascinated by this. Because I thought it was just like, this is the future of dentistry, and I was right in that uh, sense. So at the time, a partner of mine, Dr. Ronald Baer, back in 1990, 91, we created a company that we called it Perfect Smile. And that phrase, it caught fire. And just like every dentist out there that's trying to do cosmetic dentistry was using that word, cosmetic, perfect smile, perfect smile, perfect smile. And our company used to be called Perfect Smile in New York. That was back in the day. Like, we're talking about 30 years ago. And we were doing veneers like, they were selling veneers like they were hot potatoes. It's like everybody wanted dental veneers and porcelain veneers. And they were fun, but they were, I mean, it was a leap from doing bonding, and they looked pretty, they looked gorgeous. Patients loved it, and it took a good 5-6 years till it really became uh, the standard of cosmetic dentistry. And then, so that was the first part of my career. It's like I did that for about 7-8 years. Then we broke up the company. He went on his own, and I went on my own. And I opened another big practice in the city, in like Columbus Circle, Manhattan. And I started to take. I always liked root canals, and I was very proficient at them, and I loved them. Then I hooked up with Dr. Sinkok Kim. He's the head of endodontics in UPenn. He used to be my teacher at Columbia. And one day, it's like we were talking, and I said, "Yeah, listen, just like come over to Philly, and I'll teach you new techniques and this and that." And that's when he taught me how to use the microscope, and he taught me a whole different ways of doing root canals, and I loved it. It's like, and I've been ever since then. I've been using that. That's mid-90s we're talking here. So I've been using his techniques ever since, and I brush up on my endodontics periodically. And as I said, I promised Pavel I will do that. I will put together another lecture to go over a few things, help general dentists do root canals successfully and with much less stress than now. It's a very stressful procedure, but once you simplify your technique and you do it just the way you want it, and it's simple. So it becomes a routine. I always refer to endodontics in particular, and I always say you want to adopt uh, the McDonald's protocol. What is that? Repeat, 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 repeat. Just establish a protocol for yourself and just keep doing it. You'll be very proficient at it, and you'll end up uh, doing beautiful canals. As long as you adapt, you stick with the sound uh, teachings of endodontics, which is cleaning, irrigation, all of that. So good seals. So anyway, so that took a while also. So now I became very good in cosmetic dentistry, and then I took up the endodontics. Then came the implant phase, and I did that. And as I said, when I do the implants or I do the endodontics, when I do the cosmetics, I don't just go and learn from one person. That's great. You can have a great course with a great teacher. However, just don't get stuck in one minded track, because there are other guys that are doing things differently and just as good, maybe better. You don't know. And also, the other thing that I want to tell people is when you do when you do a procedure, you need to be very comfortable with that procedure. So maybe there is a guy out there teaching a technique that you don't like, or you're not comfortable doing it. Just like it's not easy for you. So learn another technique. Uh, do it a different way. It will be uh, simpler in your hand. That's why I always say seek teachings from different sources. Look at this guy. Look at this teacher. Look at this professor. Look at this lady in Alaska doing this. And it's like, because every one of us has a different way of doing things. And I remember it's like that other day I was showing a young dentist. She was shadowing me. She just came for the day to watch, and she was just like telling me, I was like, you know what? I've never seen this done that way. I said, yeah, that's the idea. It's like it's just like different. Uh, I said it can be easy for you to do it that way. It can be difficult for you to do it that way. So don't get stuck on one teaching. There is not such a thing. As I said, dentistry is not an exact science. You can always do one procedure with multi levels of approaches. So just always keep that in mind, because that's important. Uh, After the implants came the phase of lasers. To be honest with you, at the beginning, I was always skeptical about it. I wasn't. Uh, I really didn't think much of laser, and that's just because I was ignorant about it. I never took the time to really learn it. I never took the time to study it. I never took the time to even investigate it. I always thought that laser machine is just like a glorified electrical circuit. That's honest to God. This is what I thought about lasers. Till I started to really get into it, and I started to study, and I started to inquire about it. And I came to know a friend of mine that he's the one that turned me into it. He's another friend that practices downtown Manhattan, Dr. Burton. And I decided to study it and become uh, more familiar with it. So I started by using diode lasers, which is very limited in what it does, because it's just that it's a diode lasers. It's great in certain procedures, like you can remove fibromas and treat after ulcers. Maybe do some gingivectomies with it, stuff like that. But that's it, really. You can't really do much with it. Then you have the heavy hitters after that. You can have the biolace, you can have the water lace, you can have perilace. It's like you got the carbon dioxide, you got the NDX. They got a whole bunch of laser machines out there. So for the purpose of this lecture, we're going to be focusing on one particular machine that is called the MVP7. It's made by Millennium out in California. It's a great company. It's family owned, but it's small, but very efficient. And they do produce that machine that is called MVP7, and for the people call it the LANAP machine. What does LANAP means? LANAP stands for Laser Assisted New Attachment Protocol. So once we start to examine that name, what it means, and all of that, then you'll get to understand lasers and what it can do for you. So basically, laser assisted new attachment. New attachment, that's the phrase that everybody should be focusing on. What is a new attachment? New attachment basically is, in a very simple way, is forming new three things: forming new cementum, forming new periodontal ligament, and forming new bone. So there is a method as to why you can produce. By the way, their machine is the only machine in the world that had been granted the approval and the patent by the FDA to claim that they are able to regenerate bone, cementum, and periodontal ligament. Which, in my opinion, it's like when I first heard of it, I said, "Oh yeah, sure." But then I saw it. A lot of people claim stuff, but their stuff is good. I don't sell them. I don't sell anything for them. I don't do anything for them. I'm not associated with them at all. I'm just certified by them. So I'm not selling anything. So my claim is honestly what I see and what I believe. I don't get paid by them. So at any rate, so let's go back. So basically, that machine is used to revive teeth that are underway out. What does that mean? Like if you take an X-ray of a patient, let's say, and that patient has periodontal disease with bone resorption and pocket depths of like 5-6 millimeters. Traditional treatment would be scaling root planing and then reevaluate in 6 weeks, whatever, and then go back and do like an osseous surgery or gingivectomies or what have you. Obviously, there's a lot of disadvantages to this technique, which is basically you're creating very long teeth, and then you're gonna start having pain and cutting and sutures and post-op sensitivities and a whole bunch of things. Now, when you start, if you have a technique that you can actually save that tooth or that implant without having to cut anything, without having to suture anything, and also with a chance to rebuild bone and periodontal ligament, then you got yourself a whole different ballgame. So in today's presentation, the subject is kind of like heavy, if you will, but I'm gonna try to touch lightly on it and just as an introduction to you and what it can do and and what have you. So the topic of the lecture today is called Saving Failing Implants with the LAPIP procedure. Now, LAPIP stands for Laser Assisted Peri-Implantitis Protocol. And if you notice, the last P is a protocol. What does that mean, protocol? It's a procedure that has to be done just the same exact way they subscribed, or else it doesn't work. Why? Because the protocol calls for something called ablation, which is just like basically uh, killing the bacteria from the surface, the epithelial surface of the socket, and then it has to include some sort of a scaling of the surface of the either tooth or the implant. Then you have to do uh, what we call a blunt dissection, or you gotta scratch the osseous surface, the bone, so it starts to bleed. Why do we need the bleeding? Because through the growth factor in the blood, that was going to help us regenerate bone. So basically, and then after that, the one thing that most unfortunately I was guilty of doing until I started doing the NAP and the PIPs is occlusion. A big part of or a big factor of failing implants and periodontal disease is bad occlusion. Malocclusion causes that because it's premature contacts and it just like causes bone to disappear in some areas. And people just like, I don't understand. This patient's teeth are clean and blah blah blah, and he's losing bone. Yeah, just look at his occlusion. You're gonna find this particular tooth has a very bad traumatic occlusion. Once you start relieving that occlusion and you keep it clean, it starts to heal. So, so that's why we call it protocol, the PIP protocol. So as I said, in today's presentation, I'm going to take you through a few. First, we're going to go through what is a successful implant and what a failing implant. So what we do is we're gonna do failing. We're gonna decide, like describe what's a failing implant or what's a successful implant. Basically, a successful implant. A lot of people think that uh, as long as the implant is not wiggling, it's successful. It is not true. It's it's there is a lot more to it than that. If I have an implant that is not wiggling, it's stable. Patients can chew on it, and it's functioning. However, you got 9 millimeter pocket on it and one surface, or in two surfaces with that implant. In literature, back in the day, yes, uh, they consider an implant that is still intact. They consider that a successful implant, and it went into that. They tell you the success rate on an implant is like 95% or 94%, stuff like that. However, however, if we have an implant that has deep pockets everywhere and a loss of bone, is that a successful implant? I would say, in my opinion, and a lot of your opinions, it's not going to be considered successful implant. It's going to be considered a failing implant. Why? Because, and I'm sure we all saw this in our practices. Once you start to have that, hold on a second. Let me just try to to. Hmm.
You need to go to the keynote presentation, Doc.
Yeah, 1 second. It's not live for me here. I don't know why.
Are you on the keynote presentation?
No. Let's see.
You need to go to the keynote presentation to start.
1 second. I had it on my Facebook actually, but
No. You need to go to the keynote presentation. Let's open on your computer, and then you can play.
here you go.
Yeah.
Okay. So, let's look at this. Slide here. It shows that we have a gingival sulcus of about 1 to 2 millimeters, and then we have a junctional epithelium, another millimeter, connective tissue, and then we have an attached gingiva and all of that. This is all very good. It looks like we have a quality implant sitting in there with good attachment and connective tissue fibers, no food getting anywhere. If you can keep that implant that way, you're going to keep it forever. Now, here, as I said, with this, we have historically the failure rate listed is like 5% and lasts forever, blah, blah, blah. But how do you define the success? Is it just because the implant is still in place that's successful? Or I would call it a successful implant if that implant kept the bone around. It didn't lose the bone. Granted, you're going to lose 0.5 millimeter or 1 millimeter of bone for the first year or two, which seems like everybody agreeing on. But then after that, it should be stable. You shouldn't lose any more bone. But once you start losing more bone, then you got a problem. So let's look at this. This implant here, that's tooth number 29 and 30. It's stable, and it's not mobile, and it's partially integrated. You can clean it, and it functions. So when it goes into the statistics books, that's a successful implant. Even though that when we look at it and say, wow, what happened there? Something went wrong, terribly wrong, because I'm sure the clinician that placed that implant, it didn't look like that when it was first placed. So here we got like 50, 60% bone loss on that implant. And the problem is with an implant that way, you will continually lose bone on it every year. You're just going to keep losing bone 1 year after another till it becomes completely dislodged and you lose that implant completely. It's gone. Let's see another one. That's a classic. We all see this every day. Again, it's not mobile, it's functioning, it's integrated, and there is no symptoms. And the patient is just like think that it's it's like it's happening and it's working, and I can chew with it. Probably I get some food stuck here and there because you see the huge abrasions in there. But all in all, it's still working. Or is it? Do we know that this is still working? Do we know that this is a good implant? In my opinion, this is a failing implant, even though the statistics say it's not failing. And why is that? Because I have a good 50% bone loss on it. And it doesn't seem at this point that it's going to stop. It's just going to keep heading south. And the more bone you lose, the harder it gets to clean. And then you start to get those patients that is going to show up into your practice say, you know what, I have a swelling. Why does the patient have a swelling? There's a chunk of food in there, and it's like you got a lot of bacteria growing and causing a lot of problems there. So traditionally, what we would do is we'll just give this patient an antibiotics, get him in, scale the area, Maybe rinse it with some chlorhexidine and prescribe him like a heavy-duty toothbrush and interproximal brush and just go home. But then he will show up again in whatever, maybe 6 months to a year with even a worse condition, more bone loss, a lot of swelling, all of that. And then you got to tell him, sorry, it's lost. Let's think of something else. And usually that's what happens. You know, it's like you will take that tooth out, that implant, and graft, and probably put another implant. So first of all, as a clinician, as general dentists and periodontists and all of that, we really need to recognize how did that implant fail and why it's failing, and we need to diagnose it properly. Don't be afraid to probe around an implant. You should probe around implants because they can break down easily, the bone around them. I know most of my friends, when I talk to them, they're just like afraid to probe around an implant. You should probe around an implant. You should know what's going on around that implant because you could save an implant by just probing and finding one spot that is more than 3-4 millimeters. Then you need to act and act quickly before it gets to be problematic for the patient. Because like if you see this slide here, I mean, it's like we're looking at 8 millimeter. That's a lot. You know, it's like, it's really a lot. That patient will never be able to clean that pocket. And with that, you know, it's like you're going to end up having a problem. Okay. Another one. That's an implant that is stable, functioning, no infection, no pain. But everybody that looks at that implant knows that it is on its way out. We have to do something better. So again, here, you need to not be afraid of probing around implants, making sure that it's tight, that you don't have an implant. Just like as you do with a natural tooth, you should be able to do it with an implant. You just like go in and follow that lead where it may take you. You know, if you have 5 millimeter pocket, you know you got a 5 millimeter pocket, you go down and clean it. If you have a tight gum, tight attached epithelium around it, it's great. You know, it's like you will know too. But just like tell your hygienist, and even if you do your own cleaning and stuff, and just probe around this, because more often than not you're gonna find that there are separations between the implant and the probe. Now, that's the same tooth that a LAPIP procedure was performed on it. And we're gonna go to explain how it's done and all of that. But look at how quickly the turnaround in the tissue structure, and see how they have a nice attached gingiva, and it's nice and pink, whereas you had pus coming out of that pocket in that area around that implant. And the reason is when you do the LAPIP procedure, number one, you're killing all the bacteria, or just about all the bacteria, because that particular laser, it traveled 6 millimeters past the final stop of the fiber. So if you insert the fiber, let's say 3 millimeter inside the pocket, or 4 millimeter, that energy of that laser travels 10 millimeter. So you basically cover the entire implant. So when you use that, so you killed a big chunk of bacteria. Now, to go back to the LAPIP, the laser energy itself that comes out of that fiber, it is set at 1064 milliseconds. So what is that? That tells you that this particular fiber, this particular laser, the wavelength of that laser beam, when they did the study, it directly affects or alters or kills the periodontal bacteria that causes periodontitis. How did they come up with that? I don't know. Some genius out there. I think it's Dr. Greg and Dr. Yakna out of Denver. Dr. Craig, I think, from California. They are the ones that figure this out, and they hold the patent on this thing, and they're just like, great, it's like, and it works. So it doesn't do destruction, too much destruction around the periodontium. However, it kills the bacteria. But also under protocol, you have to put the patient on antibiotics systemically as well, and give them Paradex mouthwash, so you really, make sure that everything is really clean. And also during the procedure, after you do the first pass with the laser, it opens up the pocket. Then you go with the piezo and you start cleaning the surface of that implant. And you clean it with 3 different attachments to the piezo. They each have a different shape and they have a different function. So it really cleans the surface very well from all the debris, and if there is any calculus stuck on the implant surface or anything like that, it just cleans it out. And then you do the second pass with the laser, and that seals up the whole thing. We're gonna get over that soon. So also radiographing implants is a must. You have to take x-rays every year. Because if your patient was in your office and everything looked great today, and you took an x-rays and everything was beautiful, blah, 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 you did the cleaning, and just started to develop a pocket tomorrow morning. In a year, it's gonna be this, it looks like that. In 2 years, it's gonna look like that. There's a huge difference in the treatment between these two. So you need to always take implants, x-rays on implants, because you just don't know. I mean, the gums could look fine visually, but there could be a whole bunch of other things underneath that gum that is just working against you, killing that bone around the implant. Bacteria could just like colonizing in there and just like making everything go bad. I'm sure we've all seen bad implants, not bad implants, like implants that went bad. And meanwhile they were great implants, but just like went bad because we did not follow up with the x-rays every year. So now let's go over the difference between conventional surgery and the LAPIP. Traditionally, it's like when you have implants failing like that, it's very difficult to treat with conventional with the conventional periodontal surgery. That when we lay a flap, you try to graft, connective tissue graft. It's like failure rates are very high on these procedures, and just like in my practice, I've seen like a lot of these, and some I have tried to treat myself, and some I have sent to the periodontist, and it just like it's never right. And especially if you have an implant in an aesthetic zone, it's a nightmare, because if you try to treat it traditionally the way you did, you're gonna end up showing a lot of metal surfaces. You're gonna see. It's just like a nightmare. And even if it's in the back, it just like so it becomes like you're gonna create so much gaps, like interproximal gaps and stuff like that. It's just like it's gonna be cleansable, but it's just like very annoying. Who gets in there? So with the LAPIP, because there is no cutting, there is no suturing, there is none of that. So there is no recession on the gum. The gum stays the same. It doesn't shift apically. It just stays where it is because we're not cutting anything. Papillae are intact. Everything is just the way it's supposed to be. So you just go through the sulcus and you just zap it with the laser. And you just also go through the sulcus and clean with the piezo. And then after that, you do your seal. So when we do the scaling and with the cleaning of the surface, we use the piezo. We don't like to use the cavitrons because cavitrons create a lot of heat. Piezos don't. So even though they are weaker, however, that's all you need. And we also, it has its own containers, so we use chlorhexidine instead of water to clean out and detoxify the sulcus around the implant. So that helps a lot too. Also, the other thing that I like about LAPIP is the post-op trauma is like nothing. I mean, you can do one of those procedures and the patient, during lunch hour, patient go back to work. There's nothing to it. It's very simple, very quick, very easy. And it's, patient will be numb, but there is no post-op trauma or stuff like that. It's not there. So, and also, it's like with the LAPIP, if, as you saw from this picture that we had before, 1 week later, it really looked incredible. It's like as if there is no problem in there. Meanwhile, we still know that there is a problem. The other thing is, through the research that they did at Millennium, they found out that tooth or implant continue to build new attachment for nearly 2 years, about 24 months. So they get the patients and they take x-rays every 3, 4 months, 5 months, and they find out that, oh wow, it's like we got more bone and it keeps growing. It keeps giving you backbone. So now we'll see some of the pictures of the before and after. Like here. If you see here, you have major problem going on. And the implants here, I will consider failing. However, once it was laser-assisted regeneration with the laser, look at this. It's filled up with bone nicely. And the implant is now saved. So from here, traditionally, you're going to try to fight for your life here on this implant, and then in a few months, you're just going to section this and remove that implant, regraft, and graft the site, re-implant after a few months. Here you got really good result. Here, look at this. Here you got major problem. This is in every practice prior to that laser surgery. It will be sectioned, removed, and you have bone graft and new implant. Look here what happened. 1 year post laser assisted regeneration. It's almost as if you just put it yesterday. You have incredible growth of bone. And it's really a wonderful technique, fantastic. Same thing here. That's laser assisted regeneration. You can see there is tremendous amount of granulation tissue, bone loss, and 5 years later, if we look at that, again, incredible amount of bone regeneration, and you have fantastic result. Now you know you can keep that implant. So let's see another one. This is another case. Right here you have a lot of bone resorption. Not tremendous. However, it was great that this was treated because this could easily spread to the other implant. Now all of a sudden we got a nice tight implant, tight bone around the implant here. Now, again, these things don't happen in in 2 days. It doesn't. It just it takes time, and you need to. But you need to understand how it works. So, and this is how am I going to explain it to you. The the implant itself is made out of titanium, and it has a lot of serrations around it, and that's where things get stuck, and that's when patients get in trouble, and you start to get bacterial colonies. You get a lot of granulation tissue around, and then you're going to start to have bone loss all over the place. So the way we do the LAPIP is this. And by the way, it's almost the same technique for natural teeth, except that you use more energy with natural teeth, and I'm going to explain to you why later. Or right now, before I forget. The implant is made out of titanium, so it's basically a reflective surface. So when you hit it with when it hits the laser, it acts like a mirror. So it intensifies the laser beam, and you can burn the tissue if you use the same amount of joules for the natural teeth. Natural teeth are not the laser beam is not gonna bounce between. It's not gonna tooth is not gonna act like a mirror, but an implant surface will. So that's why we almost use half of the energy that we use for natural teeth. And so basically what you do is when you go with the first pass around the implant, you basically open up the sulcus with a laser, and also do what we call an ablation. Ablation, you're killing the bacteria on the epithelium that is lining the structure. And then, so now you have an open sulcus that you can introduce your piezo to clean the surface of the implant. Now, contrary to our traditional learning, we learned that you want to go in and clean out everything and remove all that granulation tissue. Here we don't. You just clean the surface of the implant or the tooth. And if you have a piece of granulation tissue popping out, push it back in. We need that in. We don't want to get rid of it because it's going to help us later on regenerate bone. So you just need to clean the surface. In other words, we're not doing curettage while we're doing scaling and root planing. Scaling and root planing, we just clean the surface of the implant. And you want to spend some time cleaning. In other words, with this procedure, you want to spend more time cleaning than using the laser, okay? So what you're doing is you're cleaning the surface, making sure that you got rid of all the debris and food and what have you, but not the granulation tissue. You want to keep the granulation tissue in place. And also, if you left a piece of, if you took an x-ray later on and you find a piece of calculus left on the surface of the tooth or in the implant, it doesn't really matter. Why? Because it's sterile. You killed all the bacteria with the laser beam. So it helps, because it's calcium. So it helps to build bone. So don't panic if you leave a piece of calculus on the surface of the implant or the tooth. It doesn't matter. You just as long as you sterilized it with a laser beam, you killed all the bacteria around, so you're fine. You're good. So anyway, so once you do that, you will be After that, the last attachment on the piezo, it's shaped in such a way that when you hit the bone, it will scratch and make it bleed. So it gives you even more fresh blood, and you're gonna need those growth factors in the fresh blood to to create the clot or the fibrin clot. So now, the last thing that we do with the laser during that procedure is put the setting of the speed of the laser to 550 milliseconds, microseconds. And that makes it hematizes you get hemostasis. And what does that do for me when I do the hemostasis? It basically, once you're done, and you do this around the entire surface, like every surface around, and if you're doing a LANAP for the entire mouth, you're going to do it around every tooth in the patient's mouth, okay? And basically, once you've done that and you squeeze the sockets again, and you come back after 3 minutes, and I mean it, 3 minutes, you look at it, there is a beautiful fibrin clot sealing all these sulcuses. Why is that good? It's basically, if you see that fibrin form, the fibrin clot, you know you're going to be successful, and you know you're going to be building bone and attachments later on. Why? It's the same thing. A body wants to heal. Anybody wants to heal. Human body wants to heal. But it only heals when you provide the good environment. So what is a good environment? The problem with the mouth usually with periodontitis is bacteria. Bacteria lives in your saliva, and it goes into the sulcus with some food and this and that, and people don't clean, don't floss. They got problems. So if I manage to sterilize that sulcus, so now it has zero bacteria, nothing. And on top of that, I seal it with a fibrin clot. So now I have a closed environment. So guess what? That's exactly what happens when you break a finger or you break an arm. You put it together, stabilize it, it's a closed environment, it will heal. Even on a 90-year-old person, they will regrow bone. That's how we grow bone, that's how we heal. So that's exactly the same thing that happened with this. You created the perfect environment for healing, which is a sterile environment. It's very clean. There is no bacteria there, so nothing's gonna eat out or eat the bone away. And number two, you created a seal around that tooth, so the bacteria and saliva doesn't get back into that. So if that fibrin clot stays there for 3-4 days, you started already your healing on that sulcus area, and now you started to have all these intricate fibers growing in, and bones started to heal, and this and that. Then the one last thing that you have to do before you dismiss that patient is, and in my opinion, I think that's what seals the deal, occlusal adjustment. A lot of us, I don't know where you went to school, I went to school, you guys went to school. Occlusion wasn't a big deal, okay? It depends where you went to school. Occlusion was not, just the occlusion, whatever. So the patient is comfortable. It's not. It's not about the patient is comfortable. It's about creating a balanced occlusion. That's what it's all about. It's not about making a patient, I don't feel it, I feel it. No, it's about reducing the amount of force that is uneven on one side or two sides or 5 sides. You want even occlusion. So I am heavy on my occlusal adjustment. Even if the patient just spent $30,000, putting all these fancy crowns and this, I don't care. I just want even occlusion. I don't want patients hitting hard on one spot and not touching other spots. That's what creates a lot of problems later on. So that's a very important part of the procedure, the LAPIP procedure. You have to have mono-occlusion if you can. If I prefer to have mono-occlusion everywhere, just like there's no heavy cusping anywhere, there's nothing. If I can, I make sure that at least it's even. So when the patient closes, everything closes together. We don't have something prematurely occluding, because that's what is going to make it fail. Now, so that basically is the procedure. Now, what comes after the procedure is also very important. Meaning, when you do a procedure like this, you have to instruct your patients, your hygienist, your associates, if you have another dentist in the office, that this tooth or that implant would not be probed for 1 year. Why am I saying that? Because you are just spend all this time doing all these wonderful procedures, trying to create new attachments. And guess what happened when somebody goes in with a probe? Boom, you just destroyed this attachment that is very fragile at this point. But I have patients, they say, oh my God, I went after 3 months and they were probing everywhere. They said nothing happened. Of course, nothing happened in 3 months. It's still working. And you go in with the probe, you just destroyed everything that we just did. So that's very important. You have to instruct the patients also. If you're going to have a cleaning at another office, or you relocated, or you were just referred to do the procedure and you're going back, you tell your dentist, do not probe that tooth for 1 year, or else you're going to destroy all the attachments that we're just trying to build. All right, so very important. Also, the post-op care, the patient goes with a whole bunch of instructions. Do not do this, don't do that, which is basically you cannot soft food for 2-3 days, no brushing for a week, no flossing for at least a month, all of that kind of stuff. It's like it's all printed, written, have the patient sign it, make sure that they understand it and they understand why you're asking them to do this. It's not just like I'm being difficult. It's not just that I'm telling you to do things and you think it's nonsense. They have to understand why you are asking of them to do this. You're asking him not to floss for the same reason. You're asking him not to pound on his teeth with heavy food for 2-3 days, give it a chance to heal. Now, if you have during that procedure, if you are doing it on, let's say, teeth, not implant, failing teeth, if you have mobility more than one, you better get that splint going, because if it's moving and they're eating and this and that, it's not going to heal. You have to make sure that you don't have mobility after you're done with your procedure, or else it's just going to move, and anytime that attachment tries to form, you're just going to rip it every time it moves. So it's like stuff like that. You have to go over it with the patient before. I also, one of my recommendations to the patients, and if they don't have the money to cover it, I just throw it in, and I guard, because a lot of these patients are grinders. So make sure that they just like sleep in a comfortable night guard, so it protects the teeth while they're sleeping, so not grinding on it during the sleep. Very important. Stuff like that. It's very simple, and it's so minor. However, it can contribute to a failure of a big case like this. I think I covered it in a fast way. I think I told you it's a very good introduction, I guess, to what it means to do laser-assisted surgery. It's not just our grandparents' lasers. It's very advanced, and it does a lot of good stuff. It's expensive. Everything related to it is very expensive, but you get compensated well for it. But also think of the alternative. The patient has a moderate periodontitis, 6, 7, 8 millimeter pockets all over the place. I mean, this guy, if we are looking at this gal, if we're looking at extractions, bone grafts, implants, full mouth, and it's like, okay, here in a place where I live here in New York, it's about 100 grand, 80 grand, 70 grand, something like that. It's just like, and a full year or a year and a half worth of surgeries and work, and versus 2 hours of procedure here, you get to save the teeth. So no matter what you spend on it, it's not what you think it is. It's just like when the patient spends that kind of money, tell them just think of the alternative. if you don't do this, the alternative will be extraction, bone grafts, sinus lifts, what have you. You know, it's like implants, you know, full mouth restorations, upper and lower. It's a lot of work and a lot of money. Uh, so that's LAPIP in a nutshell. Obviously, the topic we can talk days about it, but it is a fast introduction to it, and I hope I didn't bore you too much with the silly details. And I think I am done with this for now, and I promise to come back and do other subjects. We have wonderful profession. We live in a great time with our profession. Like Pavel and I practiced when it was so boring back in the day. Now it's wonderful for everybody. Remember those days, Pavel? Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. Now it's really different, and it's great, and we're loving it. I'm living a dream.
Dr. Radwan, I got to tell you, man, that was a fantastic presentation. And, you know, you brought up, aside from the presentation itself and the topic you covered, you brought up some very important points. I mean, back in my day, when we came out of school, we were using beepers. I mean, cell phones, who would have cell phones?
Yes.
You know, technology has brought us to places that we never dreamed of possible.
Absolutely.
Guided surgery, CT scan, replacing implants. Well, these are all things that, you know, it's gotten so sophisticated these days that, you know, a young guy starting out in practice, okay, you got, you know, a shitload of debt. You got, you know, big loans to pay. And I mean, these loans choke you.
True.
You know, I don't care what stories anybody tells you.
True.
You know, don't believe everything you hear, people. So you're coming out with loans. You try to start a practice at some point. So what do you buy first? First you learn implantology. You learn the endodontics. I mean, if you're a GP, what do you like? What do you enjoy doing? You gotta ask yourself that first. What do you love to do? And I'll give you a perfect example. When I was in dental school, I mean, I had an opportunity to do an oral surgical program. Basically, well, let me say it differently. I had an opportunity to specialize in any specialty I wanted to. And me being a little bit naive and lacking proper guidance, I said, you know what? I'm a general dentist. You know, I'm going to do everything. You know, guys, if you have the opportunity to specialize, do it when you're young. Because, you know, training and specializing, you start, you know, really becoming an expert in a field. And then it's wonderful to do that, you know. So, I mean, I'm all for specializing. You know, had I known back then what I know now, I would have specialized in a particular area that interested me. Now, unfortunately, when I was in school, what I liked doing and what I like doing today are two different things that have nothing to do with each other.
It's very true.
Dr. Radwan also brought, you know, another wonderful point about patients and consent forms. And, you know, I mean, you know, guys, we live in a very litigiously happy society. We all know that. The problem is, in my opinion, and, you know, I don't want to, you know, don't misunderstand what I'm about to say. But when patients attack us with frivolous malpractice lawsuits, you know, these days there's a lot of people out there trying to make $1 or a living by suing people.
Right.
We don't tolerate this shit. You know, there's reasonable and normal expectations and unreasonable. But the problem is, you know, cases are being taken by lawyers on a contingency basis. And what happens? We get screwed. What I say is we change the system so that when a lawyer sues you or me, if he loses, he'll pay our entire legal fee. Okay? So this way we're going to eliminate frivolous lawsuits.
I wish.
Now, the other thing that Dr. Radwan mentioned very clearly is patient consent forms and this and that. You know what, Sherif? I tell you this, and this is a personal thing in my practice I see, certainly. You can tell a patient 1,000 times a treatment plan. You can make him sign 10,000 contracts.
I tell you, I don't know.
You discuss the fees 9 times with them. And my wife, let me tell you, my wife, boss lady, she doesn't joke around. You know, and then they come to you the next week and they say, you never told me that. This is a problem. All right. So anyhow, I mean, let's get positive here. Dr. Radwan did a wonderful presentation. We could talk about these issues all day long. Obviously, you guys see I have certain things on my mind that bother me, but it's up to us now. When we are united as we are like a force. You don't want to wreck with. You know what I'm saying. So that's the way it goes. Dentistry and Doctors United. Dr. Shah, happy birthday once again. I'm going to turn back the podium over to Dr. Sherif if there's any questions. But man, that's a fantastic lecture.
Thank you, sir.
And I want to learn from you more because I don't do these things that you do. I'm honest with everybody. I swore in the Bible many times. What I say is to the best of my knowledge, truth, and I swear in the Bible again. So teach me some stuff later in life. And listen, love you, bro. And my wife misses you, and the kids miss you too.
Thank you.
So, any questions?
All right. So we have a question here. Don't that sterile calculus act as a foreign body, just like remaining cementation material left around a crown, creating periodontal trouble? No, that's your own calculus. That's not a foreign body. No, it's sterile and it works fine. There is no problem. It's not a cement. It's not like a cement. No. Obviously, when you clean, you try as much as you can to clean. However, sometimes it's just very difficult, especially between the serrations. I mean, these serrations are very fine. If you see there is something called ball attachment. It's a ball attached to the piezo, tiny ball, and that's what you use to go in between the serrations. So you try as much as you can. I don't know if you're Dr. Kotwal. I don't know if you're aware of there was a study that was done by the I think the Periodontal Association, and it says it's impossible to clean everything of a tooth structure. It's like no matter how hard you try, because it's just the environment. It's something that you don't see, and it's under the gum, 3, 4. And now we're talking about 6, 7, 8 millimeter subgingival. It's almost impossible to reach that area. But yes, if you clean it well and you have residual, it's okay. There's no problem. And the pictures show it. I can send you some pictures that shows spicules of calculus and bone grew around it. No problem. So, I don't think we have any other questions here. Yeah, I think we're done.
All right. Well, in that case, Dr. Radwan, listen, from New York City, we thank everyone. Global Summits, thank you for giving us this opportunity. Dr. Radwan.
Thank you. And again, I can't thank you enough, Pavel. You've been gracious and great. We'll talk soon. I think Pavel, internet froze a little bit, I think.